Are you ever confused by jargon? Does it sometimes feel like you are reading or listening to an alien language? How accessible is your own writing? All of this and more on today's episode of The Secret Life of Numbers.
Welcome to the Secret Life of Numbers podcast, the podcast where we dissect everyday numbers and statistics to find the stories behind them.
Each episode, we take a number or statistic and break it down. We will tell you where it comes from and what it means for you. Along the way, hopefully we will inspire you to think about the numbers in your own life.
I'm Lavanya, your data scientist on call. I'll be breaking down the numbers.
I'm Lindsay, your data translator. For when Lavanya gets too technical on us, I'll be breaking down the rest.
All right, let's jump in. So, Lindsay, this is the third and final episode in our mini-series.
Yes, all about how scientists communicate.
I guess maybe about how we all communicate, because we started off with research methods and then talking about how scientists talk to each other through their writing. And now we're talking about readability and readability scores.
And in many ways, this goes to how scientists might communicate with people who aren't in their field.
Yeah, or how we might communicate our work to the general public.
Exactly.
So I have a question for you. Have you ever written like a Word document and then gotten a score? Word has graded your writing?
I mean, it often gives me the angry squiggly lines. So Word is normally like, this is not a term.
Yeah. There is a feature in Microsoft Word where you can get a readability score on your documents or your writing.
Oh, I'm going to have to run through a few of my documents with that because I'm just curious what comes up.
There's many ways of assessing readability, and there are many different types of readability scores, but my assumption is that these readability scores are probably the easiest to get access to, and also probably some of the most common.
Yes, yeah, a lot of people use Word, so that would be maybe the one we'd encounter the most.
So I pulled this information from Microsoft's website about their readability scores, and we can go through what they're calculating for you.
Yeah, I'm curious what they actually look at in your document, because I think so much of readability depends on the audience.
Exactly. So they actually have two readability scores that can be calculated. The first one is the Flesch Reading Ease Test. This test will rate your text on a 100-point scale. And the higher the score, the easier it is to understand the document. And for most standard files, you want the score to be between 60 to 70, according to this particular test. And the formula is, I'm going to read it out loud. I'm hoping this is successful.
Okay, I'm ready. The audience is ready.
You're ready? Okay. So the formula is 206.835 subtract, open bracket, 1.015 multiplied by ASL, where ASL is the average sentence length. So that's the number of words divided by the number of sentences in your document. Close bracket, minus, open bracket, 84.6 multiplied by the average number of syllables per word, which they call the ASW, close bracket.
Okay. So the longer sentences that you make, the less readable, and the more syllables, the less readable is kind of what ends up happening.
Exactly. Yeah. Based on this formula, I feel like more syllables will have more of an impact than perhaps longer sentences.
Yeah, which makes sense because more syllables would be related to more technical language, right? Like in our everyday vernacular, we don't often talk about anti-disestablishmentarianism or
Automatopoeia or
yeah, so I guess that would be a proxy for jargon.
All right, so that's test number 1. The second test that you can run in Word is called the Flesch-Kincaid grade level test. So this test rates text on a U.S. school grade level. For example, a score of 8 means that an 8th grader can understand the document. And for most documents, you aim for a score of approximately 7 to 8.
Right.
And so the formula for this one is 0.39 multiplied by your ASL, which is the average sentence length again, plus 11.8 multiplied by the average number of syllables per word, subtract 15.59.
Okay, so this one's kind of different.
It's similar in a sense to the previous one, but I think because we want to make the number on like a grade level, it has to be normalized to a certain degree.
Right. The other one's easier to understand in terms of if sentence length is this, then readability is that.
More syllables and longer sentences are going to increase your score here.
But I guess you're also looking for that sweet spot of like, it's not so simple that it's like a grade 1 level.
Mm.
So that balancing act of how technical is too technical while still having people learn something.
Exactly. This kind of goes back to why we have readability scores. Because in essence, you want to write your text for your audience so that they will be able to read and understand. You don't want to write instructions about how to install a car seat at a reading level far too complicated to understand.
Yeah, you don't want to write it at the level of the engineers who are designing the car seat.
Yes.
Also, I feel like I don't have kids, so I'm not super certain about the car seat world. But from what I've heard and seen on like TV shows, they need to make it simpler.
The car seat looks complicated. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I have 2 undergraduate degrees and a master's, but installing a car seat still kind of boggles my mind.
Oh, I have a funny story that I just remembered.
Okay.
At one point, Lenny and I lived in the same apartment building. Do you know which story I'm going to share?
I don't.
Okay. And you had a friend staying with you.
Oh, now I know the story.
Who had just finished her PhD.
Mm-hmm.
And you were finishing your master's of data science and are an engineer. And we lived in tiny little studio apartments. So you borrowed a camping cot that I had, which, to be fair, like they really streamlined the design. And so it looked futuristic and hard to put together. And do you want to share how long it took to follow the instructions on the side of the bag and put it together?
I mean, I can't remember exactly how long it took, but it took longer than it should have. Like, we spent some time looking at the diagram and like, we're like, is this the right way? Is it the right side up? Like, and then I think it took at least like an hour to put together the little cot.
And I think it's just safe to say that the instructions on the side of the cot were not at an accessible readability level for anyone. Oh my goodness. Because I remember the first time like we got the cot and tried to put it together. It was not easy either. So the importance of readability is getting the cot put together in under an hour.
I looked up, because I was curious, what is like the average literacy in Canada? Like, if you're thinking about the CBC and what they're writing on their website, like they want to write to Canadians' literacy.
Right.
So I found a report. This one is called Skills in Canada, First Results from the Program for the International Assessment of Adult Competencies. And the acronym for that is PIAAC. PIAC.
PIAC. Just rolls off the tongue.
For the purposes of the survey, literacy is defined as understanding, evaluating, using, and engaging with written text to participate in society, to achieve one's goals, and to develop one's knowledge and potential. And that's a direct quotation from the report. And what they did is they assessed the population of adults aged 16 to 65, and they were looking for their abilities in literacy. And they had a measurement scale ranging from 0 to 500. This survey was completed by the OECD, and that's the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. They're actually evaluating the literacy of adults in many countries. So what they found was that Canadians score at the average. So if they're scoring from 0 to 500, Canadians on average are at 273 points in literacy.
That's not bad.
Would you like to learn who score higher than the Canadians?
I'm guessing there's some Scandinavian countries in there because they tend to score very high on a lot of the OECD
Okay, so
metrics.
Japan is in there. They're scoring
Okay.
at 296. So is Finland at 288, the Netherlands at 284, and Australia at 280.
Mm.
And then countries performing at the same level as Canada include the Czech Republic at 274, Korea at 273, and the United Kingdom at 272.
Where does the United States fall compared to Canada?
The US is a little bit lower than Canada. They're at 270. And then Italy is at 250.
Okay.
So we're talking about these numbers from like 0 to 500. But like, what does that mean? Because they actually put these numbers into a scale. So they put them in levels from 1 to 5. So for example, level 1 is from 176 to 225. And that's most of the tasks at this level require the respondent to read relatively short digital or print continuous, non-continuous, or mixed text to locate a single piece of information that is identical or synonymous with the information given in the question or directive.
So basically just read something, answer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Level 2 is the medium of text, may be digital or printed, and the text may comprise continuous, non-continuous, or mixed types. Tasks in this level require correspondents to make matches between the text and information and require paraphrasing or low-level inferences.
Okay, so not as straightforward, hunt and peck, find this, like some level of processing.
We're like building our skills, like we're leveling up a little, literally. Level 3 says that texts at this level are often dense or lengthy and include continuous, non-continuous, mixed, or multiple pages of text. Understanding text and rhetorical structures becomes more central to successfully completing tasks, especially navigating of complex digital texts. Tasks require the respondent to identify, interpret, or evaluate one or more pieces of information.
I feel like interpret, evaluate. They're asking you to think critically about the piece.
Yeah, it's not simply read and understand the information. You need to interpret it at higher levels.
Yeah.
Level 4 says that tasks at this level often require respondents to perform multiple step operations to integrate, interpret, or synthesize information from complex or lengthy, continuous, non-continuous, mixed, or multiple type texts. Complex inferences and application of background knowledge may be needed to perform successfully. Many tasks require identifying and understanding one or more specific non-central ideas in the text.
So again, just that leveling up, you're evaluating claims and evaluating evidence. So I take it level 5 is the top level. We're hitting the peak soon.
Yeah.
Okay, so level 5, lay it on us.
All right, so level 5, it says at this level, tasks may require the respondent to search for and integrate information across multiple dense texts, construct syntheses of similar and contrasting ideas or points of view, or evaluate evidence-based arguments. Application and evaluation of logical and conceptual models of ideas may be required to accomplish tasks.
So yeah, the texts are becoming more complex. You're creating arguments.
You need to compare and contrast between arguments. So it really is from level 1, which is 176 to 225, to level 2, which is 226 to 275, then level 3, 276 to 325, 4, 326 to 375, and then finally 5, 376 to 500. You're really like increasing your ability to infer and compare and pull out key ideas. Also think critically.
I've never seen it so stepwise in a table outlining this. Like, I think it kind of mirrors, ideally, the education that you receive, right? So if you think back to like younger grades in grade school, you know, it was a lot of like, find this, answer the question. And then it slowly becomes more complex. And I think of like level 4 and level 5 really describe you're gathering multiple sources to write like a coherent thesis with supporting evidence and being able to rationalize your arguments and write a persuasive essay or write a research paper.
That's what I have about readability scores. There are some criticisms about readability scores because there are many different formulas and you can score differently in different tests. Like, for example, one readability score might say it's like grade 6, where another might say it's grade 4 or grade 5. there isn't agreement across the readability scoring. So there's other ways to evaluate writing. The other common one that I found was a usability test.
So how does a usability test differ from a readability score?
So you can kind of think about it like if you have instructions to, say, put together your cot, you give the instructions to the participants, you give them the cot. If they can use the instructions to put together the cot successfully, then it has a high usability score. But if given those instructions and the cot, they cannot put it together, perhaps your usability score is a bit lower.
So where does IKEA furniture fall on this scale? Like, I feel like IKEA's streamlined a lot. They're like, we're giving you one tool. It is an Allen key.
I will say putting together IKEA furniture is quite fun for me, but I certainly don't always put it together correctly. There's some backtracking.
Yeah, sometimes you're like, oh no, and you got to pull parts apart and oh goodness.
Yeah.
Okay, so the metric you use, whether you choose to use a metric, probably decides on what you're doing and who your audience is.
Yeah, I think really it's like if you're writing something, you should think about who you're writing for. They should kind of drive what level you write at, how usable it is. I think that's something important to keep in mind.
Yes. As an application of readability scores, I found a jargon checker from scienceandpublic.com, and I pulled the start of a Wikipedia page about data science.
About data science?
And I put it through the jargon checker.
I feel very called out.
And I wanted us to try as an exercise to change the words that come up as like very rare. So this one looks at like how common words are in order to make some sort of estimation about how likely the reader is to understand the word.
Yeah. If it's not a common word that you could guess in the Wordle, maybe don't use it.
The Wordle. Okay, so I will read out the paragraph that I grabbed. And maybe we will just try to come up with a way of saying it in a different way, and we can check our guesses.
Okay, sounds good.
So data science is an interdisciplinary field that uses scientific methods, processes, algorithms, and systems to extract knowledge and insights from noisy, structured, and unstructured data.
Oh, gosh.
And apply knowledge from data across a broad range of application domains. Data science is related to data mining, machine learning, and big data.
I'm going to guess at interdisciplinary, perhaps, and probably the use of structured, unstructured data, maybe algorithms.
So I thought we would start with the words that come up as very rare. So we only have 2 from that paragraph.
Oh.
And you are spot on. So interdisciplinary, which I guess would score high on like the number of syllables.
Yes. Interdisciplinary. 7? Did I get that?
Yeah, I would say 7. You're correct as well with your other guess. Unstructured came up. Structured was fine. It was put as like mid-frequency.
Okay.
So how would we say interdisciplinary?
Interdisciplinary. I immediately thought cross-functional, but I feel like that would also score high.
I was almost thinking we could say like cross-field or like collaborative.
Collaborative is a good one, I think.
Okay, so I'll try putting in collaborative, and we'll see if it comes back as rare, medium frequency, or common.
Okay.
Okay, so collaborative took us down from being rare to being like mid-frequency.
Okay.
So let's try, what should we say for unstructured?
Unstructured. I almost want to say like structured would be like clean data and unstructured could be messy data.
I like that. Both possible Wordle words. Okay, interesting. Clean is like very common and messy is put at mid-frequency.
Okay.
But that came through. And I think even that simple change, like it still says the same thing, but just make it more readable. I think it's also a good exercise in figuring out what exactly you want to say. Because I think if you can't teach what you're saying to someone with any level of understanding, you might not actually totally understand it yourself. We should be able to always kind of bring it to a level where everyone can understand the concepts. As far as tricks to improve, I think it's really just practice, practice, practice.
So I guess that kind of leads us really nicely to our science seed.
Yes, it is time for our favorite part of the episode. For those of you who might be new to the podcast and aren't familiar with science seeds, each episode we like to give our listeners something to think about, a science nugget to help you think more critically about numbers, statistics, and really the science that you hear every day. And in this case, the jargon.
Yeah, so I guess for this episode, we just kind of wanted to give some tips and perhaps tricks for clear writing that will be readable, or just some things to think about. I did find some recommendations that I thought we could go through. So, for example, using short, simple, and familiar words, avoiding jargon, which we talked about, using culture and gender neutral language, correct grammar, punctuation, spelling. Simple sentences, active voice, and present tense are often easier to understand. If you have instructions, start your sentences with a verb. This is one that I particularly like if you can use images or figures or graphics and like bulleted lists and numbered steps. I think that makes it much more easy to understand the flow of the language. And finally, I think it's really important just to think about who's going to read what you're writing and what level you will need to meet them at, for example.
Absolutely. Words to live by.
Yes.
Or I guess words to write by.
Indeed. Thanks for listening, everyone. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, or wherever you find your podcasts. You can find the references we use for this episode in our show notes. A special thank you to Julian Bertino, who does our sound editing and music.
If you have a moment, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It really helps our podcast reach new listeners. Have an idea of what number we should cover next? Want to learn more about what we talked about today? Follow us on Instagram at The Secret Life of Numbers.
We'll catch you next time on The Secret Life of Numbers, where the numbers can run,
but they can't hide.